watching KOMO News.
Breaking news as we come on the air. Authorities in Minnesota say the police officer who knelt on George Floyd's neck has now been arrested. Floyd later died in custody. The arrest comes after 3 days of protest, which escalated in violence as demonstrators torched a police precinct that had been abandoned by officers. The chaotic scene unfolded on the streets overnight, fueled by outrage over what happened to Floyd. More now from KOMO's Kelly Koopmans.
The front page of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune reading, "A state of agony." Much of Minneapolis still reeling and up in smoke. Overnight, the community clashed with authorities outfitted in riot gear over the death of 46-year-old George Floyd at the hands of police. The governor of the state of Minnesota had this to say about the unrest.
A library in an area where our children, as we know, are institutionally put behind, and the achievement gap for our communities of color is a shame on this state that we continue to admire by talking about and don't repair it. And that tool to help with that burned last night.
Protesters demanding police arrest the officer that killed Floyd. A police precinct breached, then burned near the corner where on Monday onlookers pleaded and watched in horror as Floyd was suffocated by an officer's knee for 9 minutes. The city of Minneapolis pleading, please retreat in the event that building explodes. A state of emergency declared, Minnesota's governor sending 500 members of the National Guard to the area to stabilize a fragile situation.
The treatment of Black people in America is ridiculous. It is not okay at all.
President Trump weighed in on Twitter just before 1 o'clock this morning, writing, calling all protesters thugs, adding, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, in regards to the ongoing unrest. Twitter flagged the tweet, citing that it glorified violence. The same tweet appeared Friday morning on the official White House Twitter account, a government account, and was also flagged. Today, the country confronting the deeply divided issues of race.
I'm absolutely sorry for the pain, the devastation, and the trauma that Mr. Floyd's death has left on his family, his loved one, our community here in Minneapolis, and certainly across the country and the world.
Kelly Koopmans, KOMO News.
The Minnesota State Patrol is making arrests in downtown Minneapolis, even taking a CNN reporter into custody during his live report. Here's video from that arrest as it happened.
Do you mind telling me why I'm under arrest, sir? Why am I under arrest, sir?
The State Patrol also took the photographer and a producer into custody. Officers on the scene say they arrested those journalists because they did not move from the area when asked. They even left the camera sitting on the ground. You can see it was just still recording after the arrests. Minnesota's governor now says those arrests were a mistake and has apologized. While that city burns, there are growing calls for all the officers involved in George Floyd's arrest to be charged. Both Minneapolis area and federal prosecutors say they are still investigating this case. During a joint news conference, prosecutors said they're poring over all video from the case and interviewing witnesses and officers who were on the scene. Floyd's family has called for criminal charges to be filed against all 4 officers who were there during the arrest, as they also call for peace on the streets. Let's get a live look right now at the setup in the Rose Garden outside the White House. You can see the reporters are lined up. The president is expected to start a news conference there any minute now. You heard Kelly mention the tweets that he put out overnight. He is expected to address the unrest in Minneapolis and perhaps the arrest of the police officer today and his own reaction to Floyd's death. We will bring you some of that news conference just as soon as it begins. Right now, let's get a live look over downtown Seattle, where 2 marches will be held tomorrow afternoon protesting Floyd's death. One will be held along 5th Avenue at noon. The other is set to begin at Westlake Center at 3 o'clock. We've reached out to Seattle police, who are reminding people the stay home, stay healthy order is still in effect, and they're strongly encouraging social distancing. They say they will not intervene if people protest peacefully, but they will make arrests if property is damaged or if there are acts of violence.
Explode in the streets of Minneapolis overnight as protesters set fires and challenged police about the death of George Floyd. A crew from our sister network, CNN, was handcuffed and taken into custody live on television, trying to tell you what was happening overnight in the demonstrations. Also overnight, Twitter flagged a tweet from the president about the unrest in Minneapolis. What did he say that was so problematic to the social media company? You'll see it yourself. Judge for yourself. It is the top of the hour here. And good morning, I'm Robin Meade. What a Friday morning. We start with breaking news. All right, we'll go right to it then. This is out of Minnesota this morning, and in Minneapolis, the big development first. It contained CNN correspondent Omar Jimenez and his crew have been released. So that's not the biggest development, it's at the latest. After being arrested by state police on live television this morning. From what we can gather, the crew was arrested because they weren't able to get out of the way of authority fast enough. This is the moment.
Do you mind telling me why I'm under arrest, sir? Why am I under arrest, sir?
Officer's with CNN and he's on the air right now.
Okay.
You are arresting him live on CNN. We told you before that we are with CNN.
If you're just tuning in, you are watching our correspondent, Omar Jimenez, being arrested by state police in Minnesota. We're not sure why our correspondent is being arrested.
Hang on one second, Allison. Let's listen into what these officers are saying. That is an
So Omar Jimenez, his producer, and his photojournalist were taken into custody for a time this morning. The officers had approached the crew as they moved in to arrest a demonstrator behind them. And Omar could be seen holding up his badge, identifying himself as a journalist and the company he works for, saying that they would move wherever the authorities wanted him to move. He was put into handcuffs and the photographer arrested. His camera was set on the ground, and that was interesting because it continued to transmit those live pictures as the people who operate it were sent away. You know, CNN issued this statement that a CNN reporter and his production team were arrested this morning in Minneapolis for doing their jobs despite identifying themselves. This is a clear violation of their First Amendment rights. The authorities in Minnesota, including the governor, must release the 3 CNN employees immediately. And I can tell you that they are released. The new video of Omar Jimenez being released this morning, and he's back at work and appeared moments ago talking about what it was like to be in handcuffs trying to do his job, covering the demonstrations about the death of George Floyd.
There was a moment, I would say, minutes after it happened where things started to sink in a little bit. I think I don't have to tell you, Allison or John, that sometimes when you're in this job in these scenarios, there's a lot of adrenaline pumping. You're trying to focus and balance so many different factors. In a case like this, I'm trying to balance what the actual story is, how the storyline is advancing, while also trying to be aware of our surroundings, which at times can get dangerous. So there's that mentality. And then the arrest happened. I was still trying to communicate with you all as this was going on, because I was just as confused as you. We had been showing our credentials throughout this entire week, and especially in the moments leading up to that, so I couldn't really understand what was going on. But as we were walking away and you were sort of taking in the entire neighborhood that had been completely decimated, again, from the passion of the protesters and unfortunately some of the rioting and looting that we had seen, it did cross my mind that what is really happening here? And the one thing that gave me a little bit of comfort was that it happened on live TV. Mm-hmm. There's been this, when you talk within the community about, let's just say, what's happened with George Floyd, there's always a discussion that what's happening isn't new, it's being filmed. And that speaks to the power of having something happen on camera, because you can have people speak up for you without you saying anything. And that gave me a little bit of comfort, knowing that you guys saw what was happening, I was living what was happening, and the country was seeing what was happening unfold in real time right before their eyes. You don't have to doubt my story. It's not filtered in any sort of way. You saw it for your own eyes, and that gave me a little bit of comfort. But it definitely was nerve-wracking at certain points.
So CNN President Jeff Zucker said he spoke with the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, who apologized and said the arrest is unacceptable. The governor said that the team does have a right to be there. Well, you can assume because you, the viewer, have a right to know what's going on in your nation. You know, large lines of police moved into Minneapolis earlier this morning, but it comes after 10 hours of demonstrations. All of this about the death of George Floyd caught on camera. More than 100 state patrol officers in body armor and riot gear lined up near a police precinct building. The National Guard had arrived on the scene, and the police precinct was set on fire last night shortly after the mayor had said that everybody inside was evacuated for safety reasons and police pulled out of the area. Officials say that several people broke inside. Sarah Seidner was there as the building was set on fire and people's reaction.
The fire has started at the 3rd precinct. We're watching it be set right now. We're watching it go up in flames right now. I just wanted you to hear the sound of people cheering as the 3rd precinct appears to be on fire at this time. Excuse me, the 3rd precinct seems to be on fire at this time.
Well, the mayor says that 500 National Guard soldiers have been sent to the other hotspots. At that time, they were trying to prevent some looting. This is in St. Paul, where police say that 170 businesses next door were damaged or looted, and dozens of fires were set there. A Mississippi mayor, Mississippi now, is refusing to resign after a controversial tweet about the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. The mayor of Petal near Hattiesburg tweeted about the arrest, quote, "I didn't see anything unreasonable. If you can say you can't breathe, then you're breathing," unquote. The mayor is Hal Marks and has since deleted that account. And there was a special meeting yesterday to try to persuade him to step down. How about we go to the road to reopening when it comes to coronavirus? I know you're concerned about that.